The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered overhead, casting a sickly glow across the linoleum countertops of Mel's 24-hour diner. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday night in the industrial outskirts of Pittsburgh, and the place was deserted, except for a haggard waitress named Shelly and the short-order cook, Frank, snoozing in the back. Shelly sighed as she wiped down the counter for the 100th time, her eyes heavy with exhaustion from another double shift. At 45, life hadn't turned out like she'd hoped. A deadbeat ex-husband, a tiny apartment she could barely afford, and this soul-crushing job serving bottomless cups of weak coffee to the dregs who wandered in at all hours. But it was a living, and these days, that was enough. The bell over the door jangled, and Shelly looked up with a start.
What can I get you, hun?
A man in a tattered army jacket shuffled in, his long, stringy hair obscuring his face. He slid onto a stool at the counter. Shelly, fishing her order pad from her apron pocket, asked her usual question. The man lifted his head and Shelly suppressed a gasp. His eyes were bloodshot and wild, darting around furtively. Dark stubble covered his sunken cheeks. He looked strung out or crazy or both.
You have to help me. Narrator. Black, he grunted. Shelly grabbed the pot and a clean mug, trying to steady her shaking hands as she poured. There was something unnerving about this guy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. He seemed dangerous. As she set the mug in front of him, the man suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist in an iron grip. Shelly yelped in surprise and pain. S1. Coffee?
The man said, his voice low and urgent. The man suddenly released her and doubled over, groaning in pain.
No, not again.
He moaned. It's happening. To Shelly's horror, the man began to change before her eyes. Coarse black fur sprouted from his skin, his fingernails lengthened into razor-sharp claws, his face elongated into a canine snout. He threw his head back and let out an inhuman howl, revealing gleaming white fangs. Shelly screamed and stumbled backwards, knocking over the coffee pot. The creature that had been a man a moment before leapt over the counter in one bound, its glowing yellow eyes fixed on her. She turned to run, but her feet slipped on the spilled coffee. She crashed to the floor as the beast loomed over her, its rancid breath hot on her face. Shelly squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the feel of those vicious teeth ripping into her throat. But the attack never came. Instead, she heard a loud thud, followed by a yelp of pain. Her eyes flew open to see Frank standing over the crumpled form of the creature, a cast-iron frying pan gripped in his meaty fist. He reached down and hauled Shelly to her feet. S1, bad dog. Shelly just nodded mutely, unable to take her eyes off the unconscious monster. S1, you okay?
I always knew there was something off about that one. Comes in once a month, always at the full moon. Guess now we know why.
He grabbed the phone. Better call Animal Control, or maybe the X-Files. The next morning, after giving her statement to the cops and a team of grim-faced government agents, Shelly quit her job at the diner. She didn't know what exactly had happened, and she sure as hell didn't want to find out. All she knew was that she needed to get as far away from Mel's and the horrors she had witnessed there as possible. She threw her meager possessions into a duffel bag, gassed up her ancient Honda Civic, and pointed it towards the rising sun. She had a sister in Philadelphia she could stay with until she got back on her feet, somewhere big enough to get lost in, somewhere safe. But even as the miles ticked by, putting Pittsburgh and her brush with the impossible further behind her, Shelly couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. That hungry eyes were following her every move. It started with glimpses of dark shapes lurking in her rearview mirror and the prickling sensation of unseen gazes on the back of her neck. At night, she barricaded herself in seedy motel rooms, jumping at every creak and groan. Sleep eluded her, and when it did come, it was filled with nightmares of glowing eyes and bloody fangs. By the time she crossed the state line into Philadelphia, Shelly's nerves were frayed to the breaking point. She pulled up in front of her sister's row house in a quiet neighborhood and stumbled to the door, dizzy with fatigue.
Shelly? What are you doing here? You look awful.
Shelly collapsed into Marla's arms, sobbing with relief and terror.
I don't know what's happening to me, she gasped. I'm being followed, hunted.
Marla pulled her inside and sat her down on the couch, pressing a mug of tea into her hands. Shelly spilled out the whole story, from the strange man at the diner to the creeping paranoia that had dogged her steps. The next day, after a fitful few hours of sleep, Shelly found herself in the office of Dr. Elias Stern, a renowned professor of cryptozoology at the University of Pennsylvania. His walls were lined with bizarre artifacts and blurry photos of creatures that couldn't possibly exist.
What you encountered, Miss Reeves, was a lycanthrope, a werewolf. And from your description of the man's words, it seems he was an unwilling subject of some kind of illicit experiment.
That's impossible. Werewolves aren't real.
I assure you they are very real, as are a great many other things that most people dismiss as myth and superstition. The question is, why did this lycanthrope seek you out? And who is pursuing him? And now, by extension, you.
He stood and began to pace.
I have a theory. There are rumors of a secret government program, a remnant of the Cold War, that sought to create the ultimate super soldier by fusing man and beast. Lycanthropes have abilities far beyond normal humans, enhanced strength, speed, senses, the perfect killing machines. But as with so many things, they couldn't control their creations. The lycanthropes escaped, and have been hunted ever since by those who would see the existence of their program buried at all costs.
So you're saying that Werewolf thinks I can help him somehow? Protect him?
So it would seem.
My name is Michael, he said. I was a soldier in Afghanistan. I was recruited for what I thought was an experimental medical program. They told me it would make me a better soldier, heal my injuries, give me an edge. I had no idea what I was signing up for.
The injections, the surgeries, the tests, it was torture. They fused my DNA with that of a wolf, turned me into this monster. There were others like me, but most went mad or died. I escaped, and I've been running ever since.
But why come to me? What can I do?
In your diner, when I grabbed you, I caught the scent of something on you. Something that could be a clue to who is behind this. I thought if I could just get close to you, I could find it again.
What was it? What did you smell?
Chemicals, like from a lab, and something else. Something I've smelled on the ones hunting me. Gun oil and government-issue aftershave.
That new cook, Jake. He started a few weeks ago. Ex-military, keeps to himself. He brushed past me in the kitchen once.
I'm calling in reinforcements. If we can take this Jake into custody, he may be our link to whoever is behind this program.
He turned to Michael.
You'll need to come with us to identify him, but it will be dangerous. There may be more like him.
I'm done running. It's time we took the fight to them.
As night fell, they made their move. Dr. Stern's contacts had located Jake at a seedy motel on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. Michael, his senses sharper than any human's, confirmed that the scents from the diner were present. They burst into the room to find Jake sitting calmly on the bed as if he had been expecting them.
Well, the good doctor and his pet abomination. And the waitress, of course, the innocent caught in the crossfire.
His hand drifted towards the gun on the nightstand. Michael snarled, his features rippling as he started to change. But before he could pounce, Shelly stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear.
Why are you doing this? How can you be a part of something so evil?
Evil? We're trying to create the future, a new era of human potential. Imagine it. Soldiers who never tire, never fear, who can heal from any wound. We would be unstoppable.
At what cost? The lives you've destroyed, the monsters you've created.
Acceptable losses. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
You're insane. All of you. And we're going to stop you.
Jake's hand closed around his gun and he brought it up with inhuman speed. But Michael was faster. He leapt, a blur of fangs and claws, and the gun went spinning across the room. The two struggled, crashing through furniture and slamming into walls. Jake was strong, unnaturally so, but Michael had the fury of the beast on his side. With a roar, he pinned Jake to the floor, his jaws inches from his throat.
Do it! Show them what you really are, monster.
Michael hesitated, the man warring with the wolf inside him, then slowly, deliberately he drew back.
No, I'm not like you. I'm not a killer.
He hauled Jake up and shoved him towards Dr. Stern, who quickly zip-tied his hands.
But you will face justice for what you've done.
In the end, Jake gave them little. The names and locations he provided led to dead ends and abandoned labs. The conspiracy, it seemed, ran far deeper than one rogue soldier. But it was a start, and Shelly, Michael, and Dr. Stern knew that this was only the beginning. They had formed an unlikely alliance, a waitress, a werewolf, and a warrior against the darkness. Together, they would keep fighting, keep searching for the truth. No matter where the hunt took them or what monsters they faced, human or otherwise, they would not rest until every last trace of the Shadow program was brought to light. For Michael, it was a chance to reclaim his humanity, to find meaning in the curse that had been inflicted upon him. For Dr. Stern, it was the culmination of a life's work, a quest to protect the world from the horrors that lurked in its shadows. And for Shelly, it was an awakening, a call to a higher purpose. She had seen behind the veil of the ordinary world into the extraordinary, and she knew she could never go back to a life of blissful ignorance. She was a part of something now, something bigger than herself. And though the road ahead was dark and dangerous, she knew she would walk it gladly, her unlikely companions by her side. Because someone had to stand against the night. Someone had to protect the innocent from those who would exploit and destroy. In a world of monsters, they would be the ones to fight back.